An ActionAid International hosted event with partners alongside the Second African Business and Human Rights Forum has called for corporate accountability in Africa as well as ensuring economic justice for women in the continent. The side event, hosted in the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, had participants from all over Africa as well as international organizations working on human rights and responsible business practices. Central to the discussion was this year's Africa Union's main agenda of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and its implementation, with emphasis given on transnational corporations and their responsibility in adhering to human rights and fair business practices. African Renaissance Television Services had an opportunity to talk to ActionAid representatives during the event with a question of what is needed to ensure there is no profit from exploitation that can happen because of the free trade agreement.
So the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is meant to promote trade between and amongst African states and to ensure increased economic productivity within the African continent. But of course, within this framework also lies the possibility of exploitation, the possibility of harassment of labor, and also the possibility of exploitation of labor within the context of work. So for we as civil society organizations and as ActionAid in particular, we are advocating for legal frameworks to be passed that will regulate the activities of CSOs and also the activities of businesses in particular within the space of business. And we are also saying that it is not enough for governments to have the national action plans on business and human rights. We are calling for national action plans beyond the national action plans, but we are calling for the legal binding instruments on business and human rights. And we are asking that African states should take special interest in the ratification process and also importantly into the textual negotiation processes on the binding treaty. At this point in time, you realize that most of the exploitations, most of the harassment of labor happens within the informal sector and to some extent also within the formal sector. But we do not have regulatory systems and monitoring systems in place that will ensure that businesses are not abusing the rights of our citizens. And therefore we are saying that there is the need for legal laws. There should be laws in place that will protect the vulnerable. There should be laws in place that will ensure compliance to due diligence processes. And importantly, we are also saying that states should ensure that corporations and other businesses take responsibilities in ensuring they respect the rights of communities and of the vulnerable in society.
A question was also raised on the importance of dialogue and having a common platform as to create a conducive environment for implementations of laws and regulations.
And we are saying that here corporations need to be accountable for human rights violations that happen in those contexts. And what is happening is that we feel that there's a vacuum or there's an empty regulation to hold these corporations accountable for these violations. So as ActionAid, we are working with different movements, including the Feminists for Binding Treaty, to regulate or to adopt at an international level a legally binding instrument that will be able to hold corporations accountable for activities that happen within communities, because most affected communities have nowhere to go and complain when this human rights violation happens. And obviously most of these transnational corporations do not have a legal jurisdiction in these countries, and it's very difficult for them to take them to court. So when this happens, nobody is accountable, and most of our governments are also not accountable. So we feel that by working at an international level and having an international legal framework, our governments will be able to domesticate these laws, and will also be able to create platforms that communities now can take cases to court and corporations can be accountable.
ActionAid Ethiopia, the organization's country hand, was present during the event, sharing experience on their focus area of advocacy on women's rights and labor laws.
As you have seen from the session, there are a lot of discussions, a lot of issues, topics raised from different countries. So it's really a very important space where countries, learn, share experiences, and where we can do some advocacies at, regional and cross-regional levels, where, different governments and countries adopt, more or less similar laws, and they implement, the laws wherever they are. So as part of this effort, ActionAid have been implementing a project called, Combating Modern Slavery, where we mobilize communities, where we support the government, and where we do some advocacies, to make sure, women, girls, and children have their rights. So the spaces are, the forums are spaces where we can learn, we can share experiences, and we use these spaces, to do some advocacies at different levels. So it was really very important, and we need to have similar spaces in the future.